Magandang araw, my dear BS Ed English 4 students. This would be the continuation of our discussion in literary criticism. At ngayon naman po ang ating i-discuss ay feminist literary criticism, and I know that most of you had an idea kung ano nga ba ang feminist criticism dahil we have tackled it before in the summary of the different literary theories and movements in our class in our prelims, di ba? Ngayon naman ay bibigyan ko ulit kayo ng idea kung ano nga ba ang pinagmulan at mga manifestations na ang isang literary text ay binubuo or part ng feminist approach or movement. Bilang pagpapasimula, i-define muna natin ang feminist approach. Feminist criticism is concerned with the role, position, and influence of women in a literary text. At makikita natin ito kapag nagbabasa tayo ng mga materials. Specifically, kung ang focus natin ay ang mga role or mga katungkulan, posisyon, at ano ang mga impluensyang kinasasangkutan ng mga kababaihan sa certain kwento or any literary text that has a touch of feminist criticism. And it also asserts that most literature throughout time has been written by men for men. Pero in this approach, mostly kasi if you are a feminist, you advocate on how to make women be equal, not just to stand out, but be equal with men. Ibig sabihin, it is not just the men who play a great role in the society. Hindi lang sila yung nagiging bida, hindi lang sila yung nagiging focus ng kwento. Probably there would be a woman that would be the center of the story. So yun po yung ating nagiging anggulo when we discuss feminism. And also, this approach examines the way that the female consciousness is depicted by both male and female writers. So, pwedeng ang sumulat ay lalaki, pwedeng ang sumulat ay babae, but most probably, dun sa mga nababasa natin, ang pinakang sikat dito ay yung mga women na mga authors, di ba? We have enumerated such in our previous subject, in our, what's our previous subject again? I forgot. Yung subject natin. Yes, ano nga yun? Medyo kasi at the mid of lunch break ako when I do this discussion, kaya medyo forgetful ako. But at the middle of this discussion, pag naalala ko, I will be mentioning. So, dumako na tayo sa apat na basic na prinsipyo or the principles of feminist criticism. Western civilization is patriarchal. So, yun yung pinaniniwalaan. The concepts of gender are mainly cultural ideas created by patriarchal societies. When we talk about patriarchal, something to do with the males or ng mga ama, ng mga tatay, ng mga lalaki. Patriarchal ideas pervade literature, and most literature through time has been gender bias, di ba? Yun yung mga basic principles ng feminist criticism na hindi pala pantay sa pagtanaw, hindi lang sa trabaho, kundi sa literatura, ang pagtingin sa mga kalalakihan at kababaihan. Mostly, the father is the head of the family. Mostly, the father is the one working. The male is the one doing difficult tasks. But in feminist criticism, there's a certain change. Makikita natin how the woman would play a great role dun sa kwento. And it wanted to prove that in literature, it should not be gender bias, wherein all the good things, all the attributes will only be given to the male gender. Saan ba nagsimula ang feminist criticism? As you can see on the picture, to win freedom for women, women's liberation. So it grew out of the women's movements following World War II. So there are lots of organizations, there are lots of mga samahan na nagpatunay or they are fighting for the liberation of women when it comes to different aspects, hindi lang sa trabaho, hindi lang sa mga gawain, hindi lang sa mga activities. And also on the privileges as well. So nag-grew out siya out of the different movements that they had created. At meron tayong basic forms to remember. The first, feminist criticism, the analysis of the depiction of women and their relation to the woman reader by male authors. Papaano nade-depict ang mga kababaihan at ang kanilang relationship to the woman reader by the male authors. Kunwari, ang author natin ay lalaki. How do you think the guys or the male author would describe a woman or a woman in the story? Or kung ikaw naman yung reader na babae, how would you feel if the main character is a woman like you? And it was written by, it could be another woman, ang author ay babae rin, or ang author naman ay lalaki na may malaking respeto or a great indulgence or what we call to this, yung mga malaking pagtrato, paggalang sa mga kababaihan. So how would you feel as a woman raising the bar or removing the hindrance or the border between men and women when it comes to literature? And also we have gynocriticism. It's the study of women's writing. Probably, again, the authors are women, and how do you think they would lead their writing to? Paano ba yung atake kapag babae ang sumusulat? So those are the things that we should take into consideration with. And what do feminist criticism do? Ilan lamang ito sa mga famous authors. They are concerned with recovering neglected works by women authors. So there are lots of women authors but they seem to be neglected dahil probably hindi sila masyadong famous or hindi binabasa yung gawa nila dahil there would be a notion or we are thinking if the women are writing something, it would tend to be biased or siguro ibibida lang nila yung sarili nila, so on and so forth, or another thinking, stereotyping. Diba? We discussed about stereotyping before, that also meron din tayong terminology na archetypal, na remember nyo din sa previous discussions natin. So how would you label women? Kaya they would tend to be neglected kasi ganito, ganyan, so on and so forth. Then we also have creating a canon of women's writing. How would you create a canon? Canon means law, a series of documents, katipunan ng mga works ng mga kababaihan. Let's go back with the female roles. Nakikita niyo naman sa picture. Picture of Wonder Woman, picture of a politician, picture of a woman or women, pregnant, and an elegant woman here. Consider the roles and situation of female characters. What stories do they might appear? Make lists of different aspects of the female character's place in the overall story. Gaano kahalaga ang mga kababaihan sa flow ng kwento? Ang kwento ba ay mabubuo kapag wala sila? Pwede ninyong ilagay yung when you do your analysis. Include anecdotal scenarios that will back up your point of view. Dito sa story na lang ni Wonder Woman. Sa palagay niyo ba, the story of her heroism would be famous kaya kung wala siyang power? Or paano niya nililigtas yung mga tao, katulad na lang, i-localize natin kay Darna, di ba? The recent Darna. Because of the strength given to her, yun na nga yung atake ng feminist criticism, bibigyan mo ng incredible, bibigyan mo ng kakaibang katangian yung iyong character para mabigyan ng emphasis or ma-emphasize yung approach. You will give a certain characteristic to the character to make the character stand out from the rest of the characters. And the good thing, yun po yung mga babae. That makes it different. Let's talk about female relationship. Look at the relationship of female characters to each other. Examine any discrepancies that might shed light on the overall roles of female in the story. Di ba, balikan natin yung mga kwento. Di ba, pag may character na babae, sino yung mga kaibigan niya, sino yung nanay niya, how to characterize the women, ng mga babae. Di ba, balikan natin. Maraming kwento na girls or babae ang mga bida. Tapos may mga sidekick din sila, di ba? We discuss about the story of the discussion about characterization, di ba? Meron tayong mga sidekick na na-mention before. So, ang mga babae din ay may mga sidekick din sa kwento. And ano yung mga katangian, archetypal characters na meron yung bida, yung sidekick, yung nanay ng bida, yung iba pang mga babae sa kwento, di ba? There's something with the relationship of one female character to one another. Woman versus man. Paano naman po ito? Review the role of female characters in relation to their male counterparts. Literary criticism has its famous set of contrasts. Man versus nature, man versus society, that set up points of inquiry. In this case, your fundamental contrast would be, yes, woman versus man. Paano naging kakaiba? Halimbawa, ang bida ay babae. There would be tendency, woman versus man. Normally, ito ay sa relationships, di ba? The woman is struggling with difficulties brought by failed relationships, separation from husband, so on and so forth. Or even how the society would treat her as a woman. So, hindi lang siya limited dun sa woman versus man. Pwede siyang maging woman versus nature, woman versus society, woman versus herself, woman versus supernatural, woman versus beast, and so on. It is somewhat the same as the different conflicts that men are encountering throughout the story. And let's have the working woman. Look at the vocational roles of women in literature. Much of the literary criticism can be applied to the workplace, studying the work that each character does provides a great starting point for analyzing the whole of the work. Kaya po, kung tayo maghahanap ng mga kwento, mga nobela, and everything in between, tingnan ninyo ano ba yung mga normal na trabaho ng mga kababaihan sa kwento. Are they taking part of the role of a policewoman, a doctor, a teacher? Ano yung mga normal na trabaho ng mga kababaihan sa kwento? Reporter, di ba? Ano pa? Aside from superhero, usually, di ba, mga teachers, and so on, di ba? And, or talaga, yung mga cliche na mga roles ng women bilang isang ina, asawa, magulang. So, those are some of it. And let's have the female worldview. Consider the attitudes and characters of how their worldviews contribute to eventual outcomes in the story. The goals of characters may not cause outcomes. Evaluate how powerful each character becomes. Paano ba mag-isip ang mga babae? Is it also depicted in the story? The way they speak, the way they deliver the dialogue? Tingnan natin, anong pinagkaiba ng author sa pagsusulat ng script or ng lines sa story kapag sila ay babae? Paano mag-narrate ang babae? Paano mag-narrate ang lalaki? So, let's see if there's a difference. Paano ba mag-isip? More detailed ba ang kwento kapag babae ang author? More detailed ba kapag lalaki? Or straightforward? Paki-verify on your searches. as part of your deepening activity. And here are some of the questions to consider. Here are the lives of men and women portrayed. Or how are the lives of men and women portrayed in the work? Do the men and women in the work accept or reject these roles? Tingnan natin yung mga roles portrayed. Is the form and content of the work influenced by the author's gender? Tingnan din natin. Ang text ba ay apektado kung babae o lalaki ang nagsulat? Another, how are the attitudes explicit or implicit concerning heterosexual or homosexual relationships? Are these relationships causes of conflict? Do they provide resolutions to conflict? You see to it as well. Does the work challenge or affirm traditional ideas about men and women and same-sex relationships? And that will also be rediscuss sa susunod nating topics. Parang meron tayong mga queer criticism din, which we will also dig deeper on our succeeding discussions. Then I will be leaving you with asset work later, or should I say performance tasks and written output. Let's focus first on the strengths of the theory. For centuries, women in literature, the roles of both men and women, and how they were represented were not a focus of literary criticism. So that's the strength before hindi kasi focus. Pero ngayon, as part of the strength na nga, this theory finally examines how women and men are represented and deals with the importance of women in literature. Okay, so considering the concept or the strength of this theory, magbigay kayo ng kwento na walang babaeng tauhan. Tingnan natin if you have remembered or have read, take note yung title, ilagay nyo na lamang po sa ating chat box kung kayo ay may mga responses na walang or kwento na walang babaeng tauhan. And also the weakness of the theory. If the theory is only one applied to a text, it can be rather limiting. It only examines one element of the text. So medyo nagiging narrow part ito dahil nagli-limit lang tayo sa gender preference or gender application, stereotyping. So yun, hindi lang, on my point of view, hindi lang mismo sa text dapat nag-analyze when we read. We also look on the point of view of the author kasi this one is one of the theory author-directed din po kasi ang feminist criticism. Hindi lang siya text-directed. And for your task today, okay, until next week, probably, you will have 2 tasks, the written output. The first one is research for a literature that showcases the importance of women in the society. Maghanap kayo ng kwento or literature na nagpapakita ng kahalagahan ng mga babae sa society. Provide the author's background, summary of the story, and analysis of the feminist approach in connection to the personality of the author and the text. So 3. Ang focus, yung background ng author, summary ng kwento, at yung paano na i-apply ang feminist approach sa kwento at sa author. You have to look for two stories. Dapat hindi kayo tulad-tulad. 1 foreign literature, 1 local literature. And for your performance task, isasubmit niyo yung written output sa bond paper. I will be sending the details in our new LMS na lang. And for the performance task, prepare a PPT of your research and be ready to present it in class. So kung ano yung nilagay ninyong author's background, summary of the story, and how feminism is reflected on the author and the text, ilalagay nyo sa PowerPoint and get ready for the sharing of ideas for next meeting. So with that, I guess that you have fully understood the instruction. Test natin, kindly type number 1 if you have understand or had understand the instruction. With that, this would be the end of my discussion. And I am hoping that you could have extended reading on the ebook that I provided, which you are using in our class. So with that, I will be ending my discussion here. Thank you and mabuhay.